joined on the program by Mr. Sowore, former presidential candidate, publisher Sahara Reporters, joins us live from our Abuja studio. Good morning and welcome to the program, Mr. Sowore.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, I saw your video yesterday where you went to the Force HQ, said you wanted to see now former IG Egbetokun, and this is something you have been on. It has gone to court, still in court. You were still in court yesterday. So I wonder for you first, when you saw the statement by the presidency, well, you had confirmed before that, but at least when you saw the reason the presidency gave pressing family concerns that the IGP Egbetokun had to resign, was this some sort of vindication for you?
Well, yes, likely that, because from inception, I made a position known that I do not agree with the law that was tinkered with in less than an hour or so and signed by Tenure to extend the tenure of Egbetokun. No, the point is that his tenure was not actually extended. He had retired, and then they then said he should not leave and continue as the IGP of police, and I disagreed immediately, and that was the reason why I tagged him illegal IGP. And a few months after that, he got me arrested and arraigned exactly for that reason in January of 2025, and subsequently arrested me 5 different times.
And there are those who say, well, yes, those controversies happened. The presidency did not acknowledge any of them. As I said, the statement was for pressing family issues, and he had to resign, maybe a soft landing. But there are those who look at his tenure and say, well, there was at least some sort of pronouncement on withdrawal of police from VIPs. How well that is going is another thing entirely. But it looked like this was more serious than what we had before. But I will also say, well, he tried as much as possible to bring some professionalism to the police, the way he carried himself and all of that. There was a time he said he was feeling like a tiger and a lion, and any criminal in Nigeria should be scared. So if you were to rate his tenure based on his performance, what would it be for you?
Well, he was the person who declared that he was a tiger himself, but he was a sheep throughout his tenure. He did nothing to curb criminal activities. He did nothing to actually bring about professionalism. Contrary to what you're saying, he was the IGP who promoted people who didn't deserve promotion and didn't promote those who deserve promotion. In fact, I had to lead protests against him to get policemen promoted, and those protests led to the promotion of 74,000 policemen, the removal of over 500 policemen, senior police officers who had tinkered with their age. All those happened because we did protest. And but when you look at insecurity in the country, even to the point of what happened in Yewata, where he fumbled right in front of his principal, who asked him what's going on here, and he had no answers. He just fumbled through his tenure, and that is why it's important that we recognize that it's important to take a stand when issues or principle are involved. The principle here is that when someone is retired and the law didn't give you the permission to extend their tenure for 4 years, don't try to do it. If you do it, of course, there are people who will stand against that, against all odds, and that's what I did, and that's what our group did, our movement did throughout his tenure. This removal, or resignation as they like to dress it, is an acknowledgement of the fact that his tenure was never legit.
Isn't that, the very fact that your advocacy and activism, pressured the force under his watch, to yield to the demands of welfare for retirees of the police, doesn't that work in his favor, of the outgoing IGP? Because under, other leaderships, they could have resorted to force and not yield to demand. So doesn't that show that, some form of liberalism and worked on in his favor on his part. And if you refer to the other challenges under his watch, could it have been significantly different under any other IGP, knowing full well that it's an appointive position and there are pressures, for appointment from, the appointing authority?
Well, just to correct the impression you created, he did use force. I was arrested after we did the police protest. I was detained and I was attacked inside the cell at FID by men of the police force led by an CSP. Several policemen who forwarded messages and WhatsApp groups asking for better welfare for policemen and, promoting our protest were also arrested. So many of them were kicked out of the police force. Some of them were detained for several months. So he did use force. He tried to untwist the police. Even the retired policemen that we fought with who got some reprieve through the National Assembly, the law was never signed by President Tinubu because this guy ensured that it wasn't done. So how you tell about this is the jubilation that followed his removal yesterday, even while he was in office at the headquarters. And you must have seen a video. I visited the headquarters briefly, and I know what I heard from policemen across the country about the fact that this guy really mismanaged the Nigeria police force. And to your point about whether a new person will bring about change, well, we are not going to say, oh, wait. We are going to enforce that we have a police force that works for people. We want a police force that don't pander to special interests, arresting people for cyber crime and abandoning serious hardened criminals, terrorists, and promoting policing discipline by promoting people who don't deserve promotion, or what you're saying with policemen who still carry out extortion and are protected at the highest level, and the policing that protects the rich and abandon the poor. That has to change. Those are non-negotiable positions. So if a new person comes in and he starts to fumble, we'll take on the person as immediately as they're sworn in until they do what is right by the Nigerian people.
Speaking of the new person, he's going to sort of profit from the legislation of Mr. President that outgoing IGP Egbetokun profited from, which is the amendment that extends the tenure regardless of retirement age of 60 or 35 years in service. If you look at acting IGP Disu's age, he's going to be 60 in April. Are you going to be continuing the same activism against this legislation and the fact that you will profit from it the same way you did under outgoing IGP Egbetokun?
Well, I mentioned earlier that Egbetokun was appointed as IGP after he had retired. Tunji has not retired, but he's retiring in April. And it is clear that if he's no longer in the police force, you have to give way. What I know as of now is that he's appointed in acting capacity. That's what I saw in the press release from the presidency yesterday. So we take it for now that he's going to be acting as the IGP of police, while a substantive police IGP will be appointed at the appropriate time. I do not support the law that allows somebody who is no longer in the police force, who's tired and retired, to continue when you have a lot of vibrant policemen. Over 30 senior police officers are going to be removed because of Tunji's elevation to IGP. So, and there are still over 300, maybe 45,000 policemen in police force, very capable hands, young blood. We have to really ensure that we position the police force in such a way that the police force has vibrant bloods and people who can carry on, not people who are tired. But the same thing applies to the immigration department, where a woman has served there for 37 years and her tenure was also extended for 2 years. The same thing with customs. Civil defense is having the same problem. I think this government has a syndrome of retaining people who are tired, maybe because the man at top is also a tired person. So he likes a company of very tired and retired people. But it's our country. We must ensure the right thing is done without any form of compromise, yes.
So, Mr. Sowore, how do you want to lead this advocacy, or maybe I can elevate it to agitation, because it is clear that everybody who serves in the police, so since we're talking about the police, following up on Bukola's question, everybody who serves in the police, according to Section 18 and subsection 8 of that Police Act of 2020, 60 and 35, whichever comes first, you should leave the service. But this was amended specifically for the office of the IGP. We can read several meanings to it. But my question will be, are you going to just be leading campaigns, or you're going to sponsor legislation? How do you want to navigate this? Because for people who argue that this was just done to favor Egbetokun, and now Egbetokun is gone.
Well, you have said it all, which is that anybody who has reached the age of 60 or 35 years can no longer act as a policeman. The simple explanation is this. A person who is retired from the police after 35 years cannot wear the uniform anymore. Maybe where they need to change the law is to change the retirement age of police officers. They've done it for judges. So if a judge is retired now and you go and return him back as a judge, it will be illegal. But if you have extended the tenure of judges to 75 years in office, or nobody will question that, because that's the law. So there's a contradiction between how long you can stay in the police force and how long you can be an IGP. They said you can be an IGP for 4 years after you are appointed. But the law did not say that you can appoint a non-police officer as an IGP. That's where the problem is. And I think it's as simple as that. So if you go to custom, for instance, I think the law allows a non-custom officer to be appointed as a custom CG, Comptroller General. But the law does not allow a person who is not a general in the army to be appointed the Chief of Army Staff. The law does not allow a person who is not if you are in love with anybody who has retired from the police and you want to keep them, you can take the person to the Police Service Commission.
So let's talk about expectations. I know you said it in passing, and we must give you credit for where it belongs, because you've been very consistent, being on the streets, being in the trenches, leading advocacy. Sometimes you've been ridiculed and all of that, but you've not deterred. In fact, somebody, I made a joke one day. I said, maybe let's get a room between you and Egbetokun. You guys should sit down and talk your matters out, because it looks like you have to fight him, and you fought him to the very end. But where I'm going to, my question is to the fact that citizen-police relations is of great concern. We've seen some improvement. Where do you expect it to be such that we can begin to see the kind of policing we require? And thanks to you as well, when you led that campaign about the welfare of the Nigerian police, a lot of them were promoted, even though they went back to arrest you and all of that. Citizen-police relations, we still have a long way to go, and it's not a Nigerian problem. We have a unique problem here. How do we navigate that path?
I think a simple way to navigate it is for policing to understand, the police force in Nigeria. Maybe first we should call it a Nigeria Police Department and not a force. Because some of the activities of the Nigerian police and how they have adversarial relationship with citizens is rooted in where they came from, which is the colonial era, where they were set up to just make sure they protect those in power and rough handle those who question those in power. And maybe that will be a starting point. But what policing should be about is to ensure protection for the citizens of a country, to gather intelligence, to ensure that you fight crime, you enforce laws. But Nigeria police has only interest in enforcement of laws and enforcement of even what is not law. And that is where the problem is. So if those people at the top of the police hierarchy can understand that they need to change the DNA of the police by ensuring that their first attitude is to protect the populace, is to help people who are in need. The gun is not supposed to be turned on people who are asking questions, who are looking for help. It's meant to protect those who are law-abiding against maybe those who are not law-abiding. And we must also define what is law-abiding, because there are laws that people should not abide by. And one of them is the law that says you can't breathe or you can't talk or that you can't complain. Those are not laws that can be enforced. So there are standards for this. So we must return to the policing with a human face, a policing that believes that the citizens are supreme and the police is there to assist them, and that you understand that you are on the payroll of the public and not on the other way around. So policing that extorts, the policing that torture, the policing that criminalizes people, that makes people hate their country or hate the police is not policing. That's gangsterism, and that the moment that is removed, you will see immediate improvement. And you see that what the police is looking for, which they ask for all the time, is for the populace to cooperate in reporting crime, in ensuring that they help them solve crime. That will come naturally. But you can't ask people to report crime to you when each time they come and report crime, they become the victims themselves. You turn them to criminals. And your police stations are, of course, in shambles. But it's also important to understand that these policemen deserve better. You can't be paying people peanuts and expect them to risk their lives. You can't not have insurance policies if they die. You can't not have housing policies for them, transportation for them, healthcare. All those things are very, very important. And that was why I took the step last year to lead the police protest with my friend who lives in in China, Dan Bello. We all did that together last year, even though the same policemen turned on us and almost broke my hand. But that's a commitment I've made in life, that whether you like me or not, I will support you if your rights are trampled upon. And I still strongly would fight for policemen in this country to ensure they get the best out of their jobs. We shouldn't be treating them the way we treat them. If you walk into a police barrack in Nigeria, you would not think that human beings live there. They're like poultries, or where you keep pigs. So piggeries, if it is called, it's terrible, and all of that must change. But most importantly, there must be discipline at the highest level. We must also ensure that there are regulations, there are compliances that needs to be done, and we must keep an eye on the police and make sure that they don't continue to go rogue as we know them to do all the time.
And this conversation is a very important one. There's a long list of things that must be fixed to ensure we have one of the best police in the world. And I imagine that it's possible. Yes, the police is important to internal security, but it's beyond that as well, because every Nigerian at some point will have an interface with the police. You may never meet a politician as a Nigerian. You may even never come across public servants if you don't have to go to civil servants, if you don't have to go to offices. But it is almost certain that you will have an interface with the police. And it is that experience, it is that interface that leaves a long-lasting impression of what Nigeria really is about. So you find a lot of people who say they are leaving the country, they'll tell you one of the reasons is because they had a terrible experience with the police. They were either extorted, harassed, and all of that. So the police is beyond protection, really. They're meant to be one of our most important ambassadors, and we must treat it that way. And it takes me to my next question. Now, we're in a context where the US, for example, is, in a manner of speaking, breathing down the neck of the Nigerian government. The U.S. committees, House of Reps committees submitted the report to the White House where it says that Nigeria is the deadliest place in the world to be a Christian. So the U.S. is yet again reiterating that stance. And they had a list of recommendations. I imagine you've seen those list of recommendations. Security is at the heart of it. The recommendations also mentions China, mentions Russia as America's adversary. So it's almost like a proxy war happening in Nigeria. But I want you to speak to these issues around sanctions on groups and individuals who participate in or tolerate violence against Christians, demand the repeal of Sharia codes and criminal anti-blasphemy laws, and that list goes on and on. It would seem that the American Congress is doing more for the Nigerian people than even the Nigerian National Assembly. Do you agree with these recommendations, and to what extent?
The problem I have with a U.S. congressman or a U.S. president coming in to tell Nigerians what to do is rooted in my own Pan-Africanism and my opposition to any foreign government dictating to any other country how they run their affairs. But that is not to say that I will not appreciate or embrace people who are concerned about the safety of Nigerians. What I don't know, or what I know, and I can tell you, is that you've mentioned it. Americans or Trump don't care about you. They care about how to drive China out of Nigeria's market and, how to fight another proxy war. We returned to the Cold War. But unfortunately, we don't have leaders who can stand up for them. We don't have leaders who can speak for Nigerians. And because what you are hearing from the congressman in the U.S. should not have been couched that way. Nigeria is a dangerous place to live for anybody, Nigerians. Whether you're Christian, you're animist, you're Muslim, you get killed just like chickens. So, and I've always said it from the beginning when Trump intervened in Nigeria, that the wording is wrong, and it is because of that that I suspect that there was an agenda here to recolonize Nigeria. If you heard what Mark Rubio, their Secretary of State, went and said in Munich, they want to recolonize Africa, and they're not hiding it. They're just waiting. There's going to be another Berlin conference. The last one was 1885 that colonized Africa. They want to colonize Africa again. They want to colonize the world. And I suspect that, Africa will just be the guinea pigs for their recolonization agenda again. Because at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to skin color and who is inferior and who is superior. And Nigeria is targeted because Nigeria leadership is weak. Otherwise, you just don't wake up on Christmas Day and bomb the country without, even thinking about the impact on the citizenry, and just move on like that. And like you said, a congressman in the U.S. who is equivalent to a House of Rep member is dictating to Nigerians what Nigeria should be. And as we speak now, we already gave our taxation to France, and now we are also subletting our military to the U.S. Remember, there was a General Malu in this country who was told under Obasanjo, I think, I wasn't even in the country, I read it somewhere, that the Americans were coming to train Nigerian soldiers, and he told the American soldiers, they told Obasanjo off and said, we just finished 2 wars in Liberia and Syria alone. We stopped wars there. What are the Americans coming to teach us? How to shine shoes? So, if this country wasn't mismanaged, I don't think American soldiers can boast of the resilience and the expertise of Nigerian soldiers to fight, in any situation. But they've destroyed the military, they've destroyed the country. So, just anybody can come and tell us what to do. And Nigerians are also clapping for them, sadly. But that is not how to promote the dignity of the African man. And I'm not saying that we should have dignity without honor, but we can't also lose our honor hoping that we keep our dignity. And honor is to respect the territorial integrity of countries, to respect international law, and to ensure that you just don't treat countries as if they are you're walking into your bathroom to shut it down. It's just terrible to have to listen to this. But beyond and above that, Nigeria must get this act together, and that's why we're on ground holding the feet of our leaders to fire and asking where they don't have the capacity to fix the country to ship out.
All right. Let's stay with national security for a bit. And another concerning report that in fact also came through from the papers today is the concern that the federal government may have paid ransom to bandits, those who kidnap children in Niger State and in Kebbi State, although the federal government has denied that. How should we be processing this latest and very concerning report? $2 billion, I believe, is what is being quoted.
I have no doubt that they paid ransom. I have no doubt. When I was actively a reporter at Sowore Reporters, I used to be in touch with the governor of Borno State, who is Kashim Shettima, who is now vice president. And when Nigeria was denying that they paid Boko Haram money in those days to get the Chibok girls back, he made some startling revelations to me in conversations that we're having. That was when he was governor, that it is true that they paid this money. In fact, the people who were behind the payment of this money were more interested in ensuring that the girls were not all released at once because they liked the transactions, and that they were driving cash to Boko Haram, and that Boko Haram in turn had people who were waiting to supply them weapons. So when you give them, I think they paid Boko Haram about $5 to $10 million, and I think the Red Cross was even aware of this to get Chibok girls, and those were monies that were used to buy some of their best weapons and equipment that kept the terrorism going and insurgency going. So each time you pay these terrorists, you have just bought them more weapons to destroy the country. And so, just so that you know, I don't have any doubts that they paid ransom. It has been the practice for a long time now. And even El-Rufai, when he was former governor of Kaduna State, did confess on national TV that they were paying ransom. It's been a policy of the government to pay ransom. And it's this ransom money that makes a lot of people believe that the government is indirectly the one sponsoring insurgency in the country. Because that's where the terrorists get their motivation from, to do worse things, and get money to purchase weapons, drugs, and sometimes territory.
Well, and I think it's important for the government, beyond just denials, to show proof. So how were they rescued? Don't just say we didn't do it. Help us understand, if you're saying that didn't happen, how you did it. But Mr. Sowore, we have to thank you so much. I wonder if all is now well between you and former IGP now. Would you see each other and shake hands and say, well,
no, I'm actually leaving this place. I'm leaving this place to go for one of the trials, one of the first trials he put me through. You know, he seized my passport. They got a judge to seize my passport since January. The case is actually today. I'm going to court from here, Federal High Court, to apply to retrieve my passport and ask that the court or the judge who shamefully had kept this case going on, I have no apology for saying that, should end that trial and several other trials that were to put in place. It has to end. But, you know, I'm a fighter, and I will keep fighting regardless.
Mr. Omoyele Sowore, presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, AAC, in the 2023 elections, and publisher Sowore Reporters, thank you for your time. Wish you the very best.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right, from that concerns security and the police, we switch gears now to the economy. It's a major conversation which we must have, so stay with us.